In this video, we're going to compare IPR strips, burs, discs, and an oscillating handpiece. Not only am I going to show you exactly how to use each one of those methods of IPR, I want to make this the video I wish I had when I was starting out IPR and orthodontics. I'll be comparing the main methods of IPR when it comes to safety, efficiency, and quality of IPR. Listen, I'm no ortho specialist. I'm just a humble GDP who does orthodontics. I'm the dentist whose palms used to sweat when I was about to carry out IPR because I was nervous about it. It seemed like an alien concept at the beginning, and there was literally no good resources out there to learn IPR. So I hope this video is going to really give you the confidence you need to do safe, high quality IPR. Whilst I hope to share my experiences with you in this video, if an orthodontist says do it this way or that way and that might be different to how I show you, then listen to that orthodontist. They're probably correct. But if you're willing to listen to my experiments, my experiences, my failures and my successes, and throw in there a pinch of a postgraduate diploma in orthodontics that I have, then I hope this video will be very, very useful for you. In fact, I'll be very disappointed if this is not the best IPR resource that you ever watched. Before we join all the clinical videos, and don't worry, there's plenty of good clinical shots of the different ways of doing IPR, and if you want to get straight to that bit, then look at the chapters below on YouTube. Each chapter will be labeled so you can go straight to the section, because you might have a patient coming up and think, whoa, I don't know how to use burs. Go to that section, click below, click on the chapter that's relevant to you. But if you have the time to watch the whole video, I think you'll gain a lot from that, and this video would not be possible if it wasn't for the support from TOC Dental. TOC brought all their kit down. They brought along the burs, the discs, the strips, and the Swingle handpiece so I can experiment on my poor brother-in-law. Bless him, he did really well. Thank you, Kieran. You were an absolute superstar. Now, this video came to be because a few weeks ago on my Instagram story, I shared about how much I enjoyed using the discs. Now, I bought these discs when I was in Singapore, and I came back and I completely forgot I had these perforated diamond discs for IPR. So for the longest time, I was relying on burs and strips, and then I remembered, I had these discs. So I rediscovered these discs, and I was going to buy some more. I was really happy with them, and I met Saj from TOC at the Tactics course, and I said to Saj, hey, I'm looking to buy more discs. Do you have any? And Saj said, listen, before you do a big order of discs, have you ever used the Swingle? So I learned all about the Swingle, and I was like, no, I haven't used this oscillating handpiece called Swingle. And he said, look, let me show you how it works. And I said, well, I have an idea. Why don't you come to the practice and bring the Swingle along, and I've got my brother-in-law, and I can actually use it on him, because before I commit to something like that, I want to give it a go. So that's how it all happened, and I hope this is going to be really, really useful. So let's jump into the clinical video right now. I can't do anything wrong, which is good, because he is my brother-in-law, so we can get to experiment. Sorry, okay? Right, so first things first, Optragate, okay? Small and regular. The way to test, a lot of people don't know this, interestingly. The way to test which size you are is there's a size chart on there. And it's between, just bring your lips together, relax, okay? So, and just stretch it out a little bit. So from here to here, so it's commissures of the lip. So we are I'm going to say we're a regular. We're between small and regular, so I'm going to go to a regular and see if that's okay. So this is a small, let's hit a regular. The way to get that on is you pinch it with your dominant hand. I'm just going to go in here. Some people use a mirror at this stage. I'm happy to use my fingers. The tabs are down, okay? Tab down, sorry Kieran. Tabs down and tabs out, okay? So I usually use two hands. 1, 2, lower lip out the way, upper lip out the way. There we are, happy days. Now, I regret using a regular. Maybe a small is fine, but I'm just going to just fix it up here. Okay, as long as you're comfortable. Right, is that all right? Okay, close a bit. That's it, lovely. You've got a nice field of view there. So we have some IPR to do for Kieran, and I have selected a few different tools to use at different points, and we're going to compare which is the most effective way to IPR in certain areas. So let's start with the humble strip, okay? Strips have been around for a long time. Like IPR started in 1944, according to what I read. I'm sure it was there way before then as well, but it became mainstream because we started to use brackets. When we started to use brackets, we could access the places in between the teeth, and that's how IPR came to be. And obviously lots of studies by Zachrison looking at the safety and efficacy of it, and we know that good IPR, when done well, is safe. There are some limits, that they recommend between canine to canine, molar to molar. I can bring that up on the screen for you and all that kind of stuff. But what we're going to do today is I'm using a well-known, popular clear aligner system to straighten Kieran's teeth before his wedding, which is exciting. I'm taking a lot of annual leave for that, so this is me paying back. You know, I could have gone on holiday, but instead I'll be going to Kieran's wedding. And Indian weddings, they're not like a 2-day thing, they're like a 15-day affair. So anyway, that's my frustrations out now. Right, so we're going to start with strips. So I like to start off with using fine strips to open up. So I'm just going to demonstrate. So we're going to test a few things today. We're going to test strips, discs, manual strips, so handheld ones, and the normal types. We're going to use the Swingle, which I'm really excited to test today. The Swingle is this like oscillating abrasive diamond strip, and it oscillates, and it's a very clever little system, which I'm excited to try today. Thank you. Let's try with the yellow, please. So these are very similar, I've used before, and a popular brand in the UK is the Comet ones. These look very similar, as though they're from the same company, okay? So these are from TOC Dental, and they look very nice and new and crisp. So let's pick a contact. We're gonna pick, let's pick between the lower left 2 and 3. So how much IPR do we need between the lower left 2 and 3, please?
0.2.
Okay, fine. Okay, so with the strips, it's like when you're toothbrushing. The efficacy of a toothbrush comes from the changes of direction and how far it travels. And you'll see with the oscillating systems later, the mechanical, the electronic ways of doing it, the non-manual, are going to be more efficient. So we're going to try and go like this. I'm following the contour of the tooth. Now, I'm trying to also de-triangulate the tooth so we don't get any black triangles. So I'm just going to go like that. This is a single-sided, and this is the extra fine. I believe this is 0.08 millimeters, 0.08, but Debbie, you might want to correct me if I'm wrong, if you know that, but I think this is the yellow ones are 0.08.
They're 15 microns.
15 microns, but the thickness is 0.08 millimeters. I believe the red one is 0.1. So let's have the red one now, please, that's okay?
Yes.
Which is the fine. Okay, and then a lot of people get worried about the bleeding. I once, when I went on the Invisalign course, the guy was very funny teaching it. He says, I use blood as my lubricant. So, you know, it's fine. It's totally cool. Don't freak out about a bit of bleeding. It just means that Kieran's not been flossing as much as I told him to. That nervous laughter there, okay. So we are a little bit on one side. This is a single-sided one, so I'm going to turn it over. Now the canine is a meteor tooth, meteor enamel. You usually I'm going to do more IPR on the canine than I do on the incisor, because there's more enamel to play with here. So lots of changes of direction. And you can see it's getting very passive now, so it's not really doing much anymore. And now we can move to the blue, please. The advantage of strip is, firstly, is that in areas like this, just over here, so if you don't mind, there, like, to get, you want to do IPR, so I'm going to use the wrong strip for that one. Let me get back to the extra fine. Like, you want to go perpendicular to the surface, like there. You don't want to go like this, okay? That is wrong. You want to go perpendicular to the side of the tooth, okay? So where the future contact will be. You don't want to just make any random space, you want to go here, like that.
Right, I don't want to teach you to suck eggs, but this is really, really important. So I'm going to go back to basics, so very, very basics, and I'm going to labor this point just a little bit more, which is, if you have a lower incisor, and they have another lower incisor just behind, so a little bit crowded, okay? A little bit crowded, and the other one's just behind. And I'm not talking about like, they're not like this, okay? But they're like, one's a little bit ahead, one's a little bit behind, just like this scenario, okay? So ideally, what you don't want to do in this scenario is to put your strip, in sort of a diagonal way like this, and then start creating space along the diagonal plane, and then all you end up doing is you remove a diagonal from this corner and a diagonal from that corner. This is not how IPR is done, because all you're removing is the facial line angle of this one and the lingual line angle of that one. Where IPR needs to happen is at the future contact point, okay? It needs to happen at the future contact point. So just to make it blindingly obvious, you need to obviously make it to the side. So what I mean by make sure the strip is perpendicular is that it should be actually, the strip shouldn't be along there, but it should be like that. So you want to really bring it round like this. You're wrapping it round so that the bit of the tooth that's actually getting removed is the future contact area, the actual proximal surface of the tooth, and then over here as well, okay? Like I said, you don't want to be moving the line angles area, the facial or the lingual. You want to be dead on the interproximal, proximal areas.
So strips accessibility wise is amazing, it's really good, but it takes forever, okay? It takes forever, and that's the annoying thing. So we're going to be looking at other solutions, but anyway, moving on to strips, the sequence next is the blue one. I believe from memory, this might be 0.12, 0.13 in thickness, but in terms of coarseness, Debbie, well, how coarse are we talking with the blue one?
For the blue, we are 45 microns.
Okie dokie.
For the blue, 30 for the red, and 15 for the yellow.
Okie dokie.
So it's quite efficient, the blue one, and you know what? They do blunt quickly, the strips. I find that there's a big difference when they're brand new out of the pack, and those appointments are quicker. But then once you've used it for a while, even with the same patient, you might keep it, then they really lose their ability. So there we are. So just for the camera purposes, we'll get rid of the blood. Right. Okay, so one thing about strips and IPR in general is there was a study in 2021 by Anthony Weir based in Australia. They looked at 10 orthodontic practices who did Invisalign, and what they found was that when they compared how much IPR was actually done compared to what they needed to have done, they found that around about 44% of the IPR was done in orthodontic practices. 10 orthodontic practices only doing 44% of the actual IPR. That is shocking. So one of the most common findings we hear is we underperform IPR in general. As a profession, we massively underperform IPR, and what they found is that from practice to practice, it really varied as well, which is just fascinating. So we need to become more efficient and more accurate when it comes to IPR, and so hopefully some of the tools we're looking at today will help us to achieve that. But yeah, just an interesting thing there.
Guys, isn't that absolutely crazy how little IPR we are doing? Like, we think we are doing IPR, and this data is from orthodontic practices. It's very interesting in this study, and I encourage you all to download it and read it, because one orthodontist of the 10 orthodontic practices who did the most amount of IPR actually still only did 75% of the required IPR. So he or she still missed 25%, whereas the worst IPR orthodontist did only 9.9% or 10% of the required IPR. Isn't that really fascinating? I found that really fascinating. So the message here is make sure you are doing high quality IPR that is correct, and use your thickness gauge. Now, I don't know if that is happening because orthodontists get complacent and then they stop measuring and they eyeball things. It could be that. I don't know exactly what is behind it. Is it the technique they were using? Although in the paper they reference another study which shows that the method of IPR you use is not a predictor of whether they're going to underperform or overperform IPR, which is interesting because I do think that if you're using a burr, you're more likely to overdo it than when you're using a strip. It just makes sense, but there's no proof that that is the case. So really fascinating study. I urge you all to read it, and if there's one lesson we can all learn from that is make sure you carry out enough IPR.
Anyway, so when we come to these strips, I've pretty much got passivity on the blue. There we are. Now what you can do is double up. So sometimes what people do is they double up the red one. So if you double up the red one, so remember the red one was 0.1, so if we're doubling it up, we're getting 0.2. I'm actually, it looks like I'm going between both, but I'm preferentially pushing towards the canine. So I'm preferentially pushing towards the canine. And following the contour, bending it round. Okay, onto the lateral a little bit, okay? So that technically, we think is 0.2, but here's the thing, it's not. So I'm going to use the gauge from the intensive kit we'll talk about later. Okay, so that's 0.1, okay, that should easily go in, okay? Yeah, that does easily go in. Now, we're going to try the 0.15. Okay, a little bit of friction, but we go in. So we would say, yeah, that's about 0.15, tiny bit of friction. That's pretty good, actually. But I doubt we've done 0.2. I doubt we've done 0.2. In my experience, it's just not enough. No, that's getting stuck, that's hanging, okay? And it should be really gliding in much easier than that. So maybe we've done 0.16 or 0.17, we haven't done 0.2. So then what I'd go back and do is I'm going to double up the blue one. So remember the blue one was the coarsest of these perforated strips, diamond ones, which I've been using for many years now. So double up this one, feeling a bit of friction. So even though the amount of strip inside here is more than 0.2, the IPR will not exceed 0.2. That's the issue. We think that, oh, we've doubled up the 0.1, it's surely 0.2. It's not. Because think about the PDL. The PDL is also moving and separating the teeth as we're inserting it in. Okay, so what we're going to do now, because I'm fairly confident now that we've got it, and then I'm going to go back, and I'll go back onto the red, and I'm just doing some contouring now, which is something that the intensive system I'm talking about later is really hot on. They're really hot on preventing these flat tombstone type teeth, and they want to get the contour correct. So I'm going to just work a little bit of time to just contour. Now, whether or not this makes much difference or not in terms of the movement efficacy, i.e. the teeth being smoother, does that mean that they slip past each other better? Who knows? But it makes sense to not leave rough enamel, okay? And then now we're gonna go back to the yellow, the final one. So we're going back in reverse order. How are you doing, champ? You all right? Mm-hmm. Good. So nice and easy. Remember, don't worry, blood is lubricant. Okay, right, so now I'm just gonna put a little bit of water here. Kieran, just swallow, it's fine, it's clean water. Okay, now let's get the IPR gauge back in. We're gonna go for 0.2. So remember how it was last time? Let's try now. Yeah, that's much better. See that? We've got 0.2. So, Debbie, I can confirm 0.2 between the lower left 2 and 3. So it took how long it took. We can calculate that by looking at the video later and see how long, how long of stripping it took to get 0.2. But that's what it takes for 0.2, and hopefully now you've seen with strips how we can achieve that. Okay, so when it comes to safety, efficiency, and quality of IPR, when it comes to strips, I'm gonna give strips a 5 out of 5 for safety. Strips give you so much control, and you can't ledge. It's very difficult to ledge with strips. So it's the safest thing there is, which is why we're all trained initially to use strips, and it's a great thing to have. We should all have strips, because one time or another we will need to use it. For efficiency, it gets a 2 out of 5. Like, it can be so slow. Like, the only reason I gave it 2 and not a 1 is because you can get different coarsenesses of strips, perforated, non-perforated. The green ones, which are like the cardboard ones, thicker, they can help you, especially when they're double-sided, but you need to go through the whole sequence, so it can take a lot of time, a lot of trauma for your wrist, your patients, jiggling their jaws, and it's very uncomfortable sometimes for patients having those long appointments of stripping, and they can take far too long. And finally, for the quality of IPR, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. 4 and not a 5, because when it comes to quality, you need to then use the full sequence and then go back down again for contour and finishing. So it takes A, lot of time, and B, a lot of strips to get the right quality. But still, overall, it is an essential thing to have as part of IPR. Now, if you're wondering why I had onions for my measuring tool, it's because the long-standing joke of the podcast is people listen to Protrusive on a podcast when they're chopping their onions, okay? So if you're wondering what the onions are for, and you're maybe new to my channel, then that's what the onions are for. Let's continue with the video. Just one last thing on strips, okay? Autoclavability. Can you autoclave them, and how long are they good for? And can you use them between patient to a different patient? Now, what I tend to do is we autoclave them, we keep them from the same patient in the patient's box. Whereas I know I've seen practices where they, put it back in a communal stock, and then it's used again until it's just worn out. Debbie, do you have a stance or an official answer?
Yeah, definitely autoclavable. Don't throw them away. Either use them for the same patient, or you can use it on different patients. But we do have people that just throw them away after, so definitely don't.
Yeah, you can get so much more out of it. But also on the flip, autoclave them, use them again. But on the flip side, when you feel that it's not doing anything, it's going to waste so much time. Okay. Now 0.2 looked fairly comfortable. That didn't look too difficult. When you get to 0.3 and beyond, strips can take a long time, and I'm not going to bore you guys. For anything more than 0.2, it gets really laborious when you're doing multiple contacts, and Kieran, you'll compare in a bit, but it's not comfortable for the patient really, especially when they've got tighter teeth than what Kieran had. It's not a comfortable sensation for patients. One thing I said before was that strips are quite advantageous in this area when we want to curve it round, because we don't want to just go cut it straight. We want to actually make sure that the stripping is perpendicular to the side of the tooth. So one thing that I quite like doing here is actually using discs. Okay, so I'm going to show you some discs now. I'm going to use this tool here to measure the tooth, because when you've got a tooth where the contacts are not perfectly aligned, like here, when I do the IPR here, it's going to be really easy because the contacts are nice and aligned. Here, the contact isn't well aligned. So if I start just cutting a straight line here, you're going to do damage to this tooth, and it's not going to look good at the end. It's going to be a poor way of doing IPR. So you actually need something that's going to come from this approach, and the best thing for that is a disc. Now, I know that I've seen the Intensiv system where you can actually bend the insert to get around that, which I'm really excited to check that. But traditionally, I like to use a disc here. Now, some people can even use a soft-flex disc. So what I'm talking about is, I'm talking about this side, just here. You can use a soft flex disc, but the soft flex disc is not coarse enough. You can do a little bit, but I want to be able to get rid of some enamel here. And so one technique is to measure the tooth. Okay, so you can measure the tooth. So there we are. You can measure the tooth. Okay, I'm just going to tighten that up. There we are. Okay, and that is 6.51. Just make a note of that, please. Just 6.51 somewhere, 6.51. So I'm hoping by the time I've done some IPR here, it's going to be a little bit less. Now, Debbie, how much do we need between the lower right 2 and lower right 1?
You need 0.3 of a moving second.
Okay, so the way I want to distribute this IPR here is if you look at the central incisor, it is much thinner than the lateral. So I want to be doing around about 0.2, okay, coming off the lateral, and 0.1 or less coming off the central. So let's see if we can achieve that. And the way I'm going to check at the end is just doing the exact same way, bringing the clamps of this tight against the tooth, just like I did, and seeing if we get to 6.31. If I can get to 6.31, I know I removed 0.2 from that tooth. So the way I'm going to do it is using some discs. Okay, so here's a disc. This is a perforated diamond disc, TOC cell, a variety of these. I want to de-triangulate this tooth, so we need to make it less of a triangle tooth. As you can see, it's fan-shaped, it's lateral. So I want to make it less of a triangle to avoid a black triangle, but I don't want to overdo it. Like the problem with these discs sometimes is twofold. One is you end up going too much this way, and then you make a horrible, ugly shape of an incisor. Second one is lip trauma and lip damage. I know plenty of orthodontists and dentists who are scared of using these things because they've heard horror stories of cutting tongues and lips. So we're going to be very, very careful when I do this. So firstly, I'm going up against the perpendicular, but as I do it, I'm just going to angle it in a bit. I'm going kind of like the long axis. I'm de-triangulizing the tooth. So here we go.
Okay, just me again with another diagram just to make it really tangible here. IPR is more than just space creation. It's about getting the right shapes of the teeth. And commonly we want to avoid black triangles. So one way we can avoid black triangles is, as well as creating the space, we can selectively remove parts of the tooth and preserve the other part of the tooth so that you can de-triangulate a tooth. Now what that looks like here is, and this is where a disc can be really useful, so when you don't have perfectly aligned contacts, like here, you have a tooth that's labial and you have another tooth that's a little bit further back, it's a bit more lingual. So in this scenario, strips, you can strip it, it's a bit slow and it's a bit of a faff to sort of bend it around. You're probably better off waiting for the contact to be a little bit more aligned and the teeth to be next to each other before you do the significant part of the IPR. But what you can do with a disc is actually you can measure the tooth beforehand, as I show in the video, and then measure it afterwards. And then what you can also do with a disc is, as long as you keep in the long axis of the tooth, so keeping the long axis of the tooth, we can remove the excess enamel that's making it look like a triangular tooth. So we can de-triangulize this tooth. So we would be taking the disc and we would be removing around about that portion, and then you want to just strip to get nice and smooth. So now you're removed, let's say that's 0.3 millimeters of enamel from that incisor, but at the same time you've also made it more square, you've made it more rectangular, you've de-triangulized that tooth, and you're less likely to have a black triangle. And of course with the disc, you can access that area really well, and that's why I'm a big fan of using those digital gauges. And then of course the tooth that's a bit more lingual, you can go on the like in the mesial surface, the proximal surface, on the backstroke, and I demonstrate that in the video. So I hope that makes it a bit more clear about what you're trying to do with the disc in those scenarios where they're not perfectly aligned. You can still be clever and do some IPR in those cases.
And checking against the long axis. So this is the angle the tooth wants to be, the side of the tooth. This is the long axis, is the difference. So I'm going kind of in between. I'm predicting where it's going to look like. I'm contouring the rest. Okay, so once I get to about this stage, you can see it's all perpendicular to the side of the tooth. Now you can see it's very tombstone-like, it's very squarish, so I can just do a little bit of contouring. Okay, and now what we're going to do, really important, is go back with the strips. So instead of just going like this, again, I'm going to contour it like that because that is where the contact is going to be. You always do IPR where the future contact will be, not just where the teeth meet when they're in the crowded state. Big mistake. Move your head to the right so they can get better lighting. Thank you. See, I'm very much making sure I'm staying perpendicular to that incisor. Okay, so now let's give that a bit of a wash. Just do some more polishing and contouring before I check if we have enough of a space here. I.e., was I able to remove 0.2 or thereabouts? Probably not, because we tend to underdo the IPR. See that nice flat surface we made there? But I'm just trying to curve it a little bit. Contouring. Okay, right, let's try. Let's see. So remember 6.51. Okay, I'm going to take that back to 0. Okay, 0. Okay, and let's try again now. So I'm going to open it up beyond 6.51. I'm going to get to the distal. I'm going to get to the mesial. And just as I did before, I'm going to go as tight as I can against the tooth. And now we have, look at that. That is, okay, that's pretty good. I've done exactly 0.2. Which is a minor miracle. Anyway, so you can see how useful that is. And now I know that I just need to do 0.1 on that incisor here. So at the moment, if we try to get in, so the disc is very efficient. It can be dangerous, so be very careful, but it can be efficient, but it's rigid. So I had to do a lot of extra work to polish it and contour it, but there are some other things that we can use a bit later to do that.
And that's 0.3 done, because we took 0.2 off this tooth and we proved it. Now, this is looking like a bit tombstoney, a bit flat to me. I would like to do more contouring, but I'm very excited to use the intensive system very soon, which is supposed to be really good at doing that. So we can show off for that bit later.
While you've got it folded over, fold the sides down.
Okay.
Pull it tight.
So a little bit of a faff. A little bit of a faff, but here we're here now. Okay, I've opted for the single-sided here. Because I just want a bit more control. Okay, open up nice and big, buddy. Okay, so feel the friction here. This is not perforated. This is a unperforated flat one. If you ever forget the color order, it's the same as ISO. It's the same as K-files, right? We go from blue to green, go to yellow to red. So it's all the same as K-files. So if ever you forget, it's a universal ISO.
So again, I'm expecting this to go much easily now. There we are, really easy. So I'm hoping now the 0.15 will go in quite nicely. There we are. Okay, and just out of curiosity, have I perhaps overcooked it? I'm going to go to 0.2. No, I can't get that in, which is good. It's very difficult. It's not a complete contact, which is what I wanted, because I know there's a bit of crowding there already. So I'm actually really happy with that. It could be polished and contoured some more, but for the purpose of the video, I'm just going to continue.
I hope you found that useful to see how the disc can be used in that way. When you have that contact that's not perfectly aligned, I think that's the most clever thing about using discs, but they're very rigid. You know, they look like tombstones, the teeth, because they're so flat in the proximal surfaces, which is why I'm going to give it a quality 3 out of 5, because you still need to go back and do lots of polishing and finishing to get the right contact area. The efficiency is 4 out of 5 because you can be really quick, as you saw, and you don't necessarily need irrigation, because it's like using anything in a slow handpiece. As long as you're careful, you might, blow a bit of water from 3-in-1 on it, but you don't actually need irrigation. And for the video, it worked out that we can get some good footage of seeing how I was sweeping up on that proximal surface of the tooth while using the disc and to remeasure. That was a really cool thing. But even if you got a well-aligned contact, I'd just put a wedge inside, a wooden wedge, and then I'd be using the disc after my initial stripping to create the space. So you have to create the space for the disc, and then you can bring the disc through and just sweep the proximal surfaces, and just be very careful you don't deviate too much. If you start deviating, it looks very ugly. Now, the elephant in the room is about the safety concerns regarding a disc. I'm going to give safety a 2 out of 5. When you mention the disc to orthodontists, they start to tremble. I think most orthodontists I know have got a horror story to tell you when it comes to usage of discs. So be very careful. There are some systems with a guard available, but I don't know how much that obscures your vision, because we need 0.3 here, okay? And so I would not use a burr for anything less than 0.3. I know from experience now that when I do it, I can get 0.3 very quickly, okay? So I'm gonna use it for that one. Now, we hear mixed opinions all the time on social media, on these forums and stuff. If you just bring the camera up. Some orthodontists are really against using burrs. Some are really pro. Some are saying never use it anteriorly, never use it posteriorly. We hear everything. There's no unanimous sort of rule. As long as we get the space you want and got nice polished contoured edges, then whatever works best in your hands. So maybe it will be useful for you to see how I was trained by my principal who taught me in Invisalign how to use a burr. So let's see that. So the trick is you go a little bit buccally, a little bit palatally, and that little bit of enamel left in the middle is so quick to just strip away. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so turn your head to the right, my friend. Okay, we will need some irrigation. If I come here and if I do this, yeah, that's good. Yep. Yeah, okay, fine. So I'm going to come here by the papilla, okay, and I'm just stroking up. I'm just stroking up there. I'm keeping my hand very sort of along the area of the contact. Right, that's a little bit labial done. I'm now going to get the mirror. Turn your head to the right. So you might need to record the mirror here. Okay, so I'm now going to come lately. Just me again with a bit more advice because I know that you can't see the palatal area too well here in the mirror. So you can see what I'm doing labially, and it's very similar what you're doing palatally here. You're essentially getting the burr, you're going to line it up along the long axis of the contact. You don't want to be veering left or right. You're going to get it up against the long axis of the contact, and you just want to do light brush strokes. That's what my principal taught me. You go brush strokes like that, and essentially you're troughing through the labial part, you're troughing through the palatal part of the contact, and you're going to leave a thin slither of enamel in the middle, and then that strip will very efficiently get rid of that last bit of enamel. So make sure your orientation is correct, and you're just brushing. A green, single-sided, quite coarse, and that usually just gets rid of the little bit of enamel that was in between there. So usually, think about how much work you have to do to try and fit a green in. You can see I'm just racing along here. There we are. I've got the green all the way to the bottom that quickly. So burrs are quick, but they're scary to use. I remember how scared I was to use a burr initially. And you know, you can ledge. I've done it before. You can ledge into a tooth. I'm very cautious. I use 7.5 times magnification, which I'm wearing. There we are. That green has gone in nicely. And what I'm doing now is I'm checking for ledges. I can't feel a ledge. Let's go back here. Okay, let's just blow some air there so you can see how much space I just made. Look at that. Yeah? See that quite clearly. Now, that was really quick. But you can ledge. That's the downside. So I'm just going to just contour. And let's see how much IPR that made. In my previous experiences, it's usually around about 0.3. If you're not careful here, you can really do some damage with burrs. Right, so let's just check with 0.2 to confirm we got at least 0.2. I'd be very surprised if we don't. Comes in very easily. All right, 0.3 now. Turn your head to the right. Okay, we're good in the incisal portion. When we get to mid portion, cervically we are not. So where the embrasure space is, and that's a common mistake right there. So the burr hasn't done enough. Now what I don't want to do is it doesn't give me the control. So what I don't want to do is just go here and just start tickling the portion here. So I'd prefer going in with a strip.
Seriously, one of those companies, if there's a real demand,
yeah,
they'll go and get it.
Yeah.
Pick who they,
That's fine. That's fine. Anyway, so I'm going to go back to the green, which is the. But I don't need to do any work incisally. I am just going cervically. It's really important when you're checking for space, you check all the way through and through, right down to the gingiva, like I did. Is there any more coarse than green? Do you have a black one or something?
No, that's the most coarse.
Sure, I don't think most orthodontists will ever need to go beyond that, to be honest with you. But I'm just being hesitant to using the burr anymore now, because I've got my main space. So let's see if that's made a difference. Okay, I can get a little bit, yeah, I'm pretty much there, but I just feel a bit more friction. I'm not all the way down. And that's where you can really get held up in your IPR. I love how his moustache is coming in the way. Right. Okay, so we've got plenty of space up there. As we go down, there, that is more like a 0.2. Here is a 0.3. You see the transition? So what I'm going to do, because I've tried with the strips now, and it's taking too long. I mean, I could go at it for another couple of minutes, and that's the disadvantage of strips, is I'm going to just use a disc there, because I'm very comfortable doing that. Finish that off, and then we can move on to the intensive system. This is a power to cut lips. Be very careful. So again, long axis of the tooth. I'm being very careful where I'm applying the pressure. I'm trying to go cervically by the gum. There we are. You got that? We got it. Yep. That's 0.3. Upper left 1, 2. 0.3.
So as you can see, burrs are great overall, but there is a disadvantage, as I showed you. Towards the incisal edge, the IPR was much better than towards the gingival, and that's because the shape of the burr. If we look at the shape of the burr, we know it's thinner at the tip and thicker higher up. And so when you're making the IPR, naturally you're going to remove more tooth structure coronally. So what I had to do to make the IPR more uniform is actually go back with strips and go to the gingival area and just tidy that bit up. So just remember to be careful, and it's still worth checking with the IPR gauge. Even though it looks like you've got enough IPR, it's really worth checking with the IPR gauge to make sure you can go all the way down to the gingiva. Burrs are great, they're really efficient, but they are rigid, they have a tombstone appearance, so you do just go back to the strips, maybe the coarse ones first, and then work your way down to polishing ones to get the right shape, get the right contour, get the right curves on these teeth. We all love curvy teeth, we know that. So burrs overall for me are going to get a 2.5 stars for safety, because you can ledge. Now I've ledged before, okay, I'll put my hand up, I've ledged before. Thankfully nothing too bad that it was like, you know, need to restore it or whatever, but it's scary when it happens. So you have to be really careful. I use high magnification, I'm very still, I try not to drink too many coffees before I do it, so you need good access and a good mouth to be able to carry out burrs. And again, like a lot of the methods of IPR, it's really only possible when you have a nice well-aligned contact, because if the contact is not well aligned and their teeth are tipping over, how are you going to burr that contact? You can't, right? You want to be working on nice, well-aligned contacts, which is why I did the upper left central and lateral incisor as a demo, because the contact was pretty much well-aligned. We just needed to create this space. For efficiency, I'm going to give it a 4. I didn't give it a 5 because you still need to go back and do the polishing and finishing stages. And for the quality of the IPR with burrs, I'm going to give it a 3 onions, because you still need to go back and contour it and get a nice emergence profile from the gingiva. So the quality is good, but it leaves a little bit to be desired. So 3 out of 5 for quality with the IPR burrs. Now, all these things, if you want to find out what I'm using, in the description below, I've got which strips they are, which burrs we're using, which ones to get, so you can, you know the exact burr codes and where to get them from down below in the description of this video. Now, like I told you at the beginning of this video, I was dead set on buying or restocking my discs at the practice. I wanted more discs because I remembered how awesome they were, and I wanted to get some more because they're efficient and good. And yes, it's a little bit scary when you use them, but they're very quick. But then Saj said, no, I want you to try the Swingle. So here's the bit where I try the Swingle, and let's see if it lives up to the claim of the following. They claim that you can do half an hour's worth of IPR in 60 seconds. Now that's quite a bold claim. Let's see how I got on with the Swingle. I'm really excited to try the Intensiv Swingle. Okay, so Intensiv is a Swiss company, and they specialize in dental diamonds and ortho IPR equipment. I'm really excited because a lot of dentists told me about this system, so I'm super excited. I mean, I met Saj. Saj's got the camera now. I met Saj at Kef Tactics course where I was doing a bit of teaching. Oh, he's saying hello. Okay, fine. I met Saj there. Say hello, Saj.
Hello.
And I was telling Saj how much I love using discs. Okay, and Saj said to me, and I said, oh, do you sell discs? I want to buy some discs from you. And Saj said, listen, before you buy the disc, you have to try the Swingle. I love the Swingle. And I said, okay, fine. So I started doing some more research, YouTube videos, got in touch with the company. They've been really good and supportive, sending information. So I was very ever grateful for Debbie to come over and drop off a Swingle, which we're going to try today. I haven't used it before. I know what I'm doing now because I've read up on it, but I haven't used it before. But I'm really excited. So the things about the Swingle is that claimed advantage is that you can do half an hour's worth of IPR in 60 seconds. Okay, so half an hour's worth of IPR in a minute. Now, I think that actually means between the teeth, yeah, 60 seconds of in between the teeth versus 60 seconds of stripping or something, you know, there's going to be a big difference. Okay, a bit kind of like the burr. You see how quick I was there. What it doesn't probably account for is switching over from disc to disc to disc, because there's not disc, sorry. What's the best thing to describe? Files. Okay, so you're switching over different files, different coarseness. Okay, I'm going to show you that. So let's have, this is the Swingle handpiece, right? And this is it's kind of like a speed reducing, because it's 2 to 1. So when I do 40,000 on here, that's going to be 20,000 on the handpiece here. Various different files you put in. I was speaking to my buddy Farouk Ahmed earlier, specialist orthodontist. He's got a podcast called Ortho in Summary, and we were discussing the system, and he tells me he's a big fan of the space opener. He thinks the space opener of this is amazing. So let's use that. Okay, let's start off by using a space opener. And Debbie, do you always recommend using a space opener, or is that part of the sequence?
It is to just literally open space. You don't use it for anything else. As soon as it's the only serrated file.
Okay, so I mean, alternative to using that is strips. But if you've got this fancy system and you want to use it to a full extent, you want to skip the strips if you can, because this has everything. This is the polishing, contouring, and the space creation. So you need enough space to get the next file in. That's what you're trying to do. So let's have the space opener. Open up, buddy. There we are. Yeah. Right, I'm not, so I've done space creation here, okay? I'm going to skip this one. They're too crowded, okay? I just don't think there's an alternative for strips when they're too crowded like this. So I'm going to do this in stages. So I'm going to do some strips, because can you imagine putting a strip space creation here? You're going to lose a quarter of a premolar here. So this one is a really crowded area. We will manage this one with strips. Anyway, let's move along. So upper right 3 and 4. Does that need IPR?
Yeah, 0.3.
0.3, okay, lovely. Let's use the space creation there. I'm keeping along the line of the premolar. There we are. So I was using two-handed technique to keep it stable. So we're keeping that quite stable, like I prep crowns. Okay, now upper right 3 and 2.
Yeah, 0.3.
0.3, lovely.
It's all 0.3.
On the top, okay.
Yeah. Apart from the very last one.
Okay, alright, that's handy. Make sure it's locked, yep. I just angled it a bit so I don't hit the gum so much, hit the papilla. I'm just going to make sure I'm all the way down. Like that. Upper right 2 and 1, also 0.3.
Yeah.
Bit of an angle there to not get rid of the filler. 1 minute. There we are. In terms of quality of footage, is that right? Yeah. Okay, turn your head to the right a bit, so centrals now. Make sure it's okay. No bend in it, good. That was easy. We've done our space creation here already. Okay, good to know. So red one's most popular. Now we were talking about single-sided, double-sided earlier. Whilst you do stock single-sided, I understand that double-sided is what most dentists buy, right?
Yeah, 95% of the time. Yeah.
Fine. I'm probably one of those cautious dentists who probably would buy a single-sided one, to be honest with you. Yeah. I just see some advantages of that, but yeah, it's good to know. Right, let me get in the right position. Turn your head towards me, buddy. Well done. That's a little bit more to the left there. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to just unlock it. So I like the ability to unlock it and get into position again. There we are. Lock it there. Okay, so now I'm preferentially going, okay, so how much IPR do we need here?
On the lower...
Right, 3 and 2?
0.2.
0.2, okay, fine. preferentially push towards the lateral, preferentially push towards the canine here, come all the way down to the gingiva. There we are. Now this is clever right here. The ability to do that. Can you see the advantage of being able to contour around the canine like that? This is going to be a game changer. This looks very clever to be able to do this. So I'm quite impressed by that. Look at me go. Right, I'm not going to lock it because we don't need to. Okay, so then I'm going to go. Okay, good. And now let's see what happens. I'm really testing it now. I'm going to bend it the other way now. So ideally metals, you don't want to go too bendy-in-y, bendy-outy. You'd start bending them too much. But that felt pretty seamless. That was quite easy to do. So I'm happy with that. Again, I'm going to keep it loose. There we are. I put a lot of emphasis, you know, this company on finishing and polishing to get the right IPR. I quite like that. Something like most dentists don't pay too much attention towards. Bish bash bosh, I'm going to do the IPR and move on. But I quite like the idea of doing it once, doing it right. So let's check that now. Okay, and last one now. Okay, and open up. I can really put it up against the canine there, so I'm really coming up against canine. I'm probably going to lock it here because there's not enough contact between the tooth now, so I've locked it. I'm really now going against the lateral incisor now, pushing up against it. I can get a nice contour here. Okay, I preferentially want to polish this area a bit more over here. Just there. So this is where a single-sided would be quite good to have, because I'm a little bit worried about using a double-sided here. So I do think a value of a single-sided bent over, because if I use a double-sided and I'm finishing there, I'm still hitting the lateral a little bit. That's where I see the benefit of a single-sided actually. Okay, but we've got the required amount of space. Now can I just check the IPR for the lower now? So we've done 0.2 between the lower right 3 and 2. Is that the last one for lower? Yeah. Okay, lovely. Okay guys, on to the most important bit now. I'm testing the 80 microns?
Yeah.
80 microns, which has a thickness of around about 0.3 millimeters, double-sided. And so I'm going to use it where I need 0.4 millimeters. It was very difficult to do the initial space opening in this very crowded area. So I really am pushing the boundaries, and some people might frown upon me for doing IPR so quickly in that one area, but I felt like I could. So I started, so I have to commit now and finish. And I think the beauty of it will come from using the finishing and polishing. But now that I've committed, I've got 0.3. I'm going to get my 0.4 using this in that one area. And you'll see how efficient I think it will be. Right. So turn your head to the right, buddy. More to the right. A little bit more to the right. Okay, so remember canine, the premolar region where there's a bit of crowding. So I'm going to get it in position and then lock it there. So here I'm going to lock it here. I've locked it in that position. Check again. Yep, it's the correct tooth. Okay, that's it. Yeah, that's looking pretty decent to me. Once you get that polished and contoured, that's going to look lovely. Get the right angle. So there was a bit of crap. There we are. We've got 0.3 in that very exact plane. There we are. But I'm obviously it's going to feel a little bit more polished, and I think that's as much as we can go because of the crowding that we had. So we have to account for the crowding. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to quickly have a look around because I use a 60 microns everywhere else. And I used it, as you saw in the footage, in QuickTime. Yeah, I see these lovely bits of IPR. We'll get some photos of this at the end so you can also see. The only areas I haven't done IPR is where I'll show you in the occlusal photo, where the canine and premolar were just extremely crowded. That's one area we need to use strips for. If there's extreme crowding there, I think you will struggle with anything except strips. So now I'm just going to do blitz it with the finishing, blitz it with the polishing, and we're done. So Debbie, in terms of there are certain burrs that dentists buy. There are certain favorite strips that dentists buy. Is there a sequence that, for cost-saving purposes, that dentists, do they buy the entire sequence, or there are more popular sequences to buy?
With the set, they get everything. So
okay.
With the initial kit, they get the opener, which is the orange, the 15, the 25, the 40, the 60 and the 80, and then you can get them as and when you need them. So we find the most popular is the red, which is the 40.
Yeah, we can use it in a free position now because we're finishing polishing. So I got lovely space creation here, but I want to get a nice contoured, which is mandatory, I think. When I was looking at the videos, it was like, I almost thought it was, okay, you know, he's got the space. Does he really need to spend so much time contouring polishing? But I think it's worth it. To spend a little bit of time, get the contour polishing, and then you're done. I don't need to see Kieran again. Other than those premolars, we just need a bit of stripping. So I'm just bending it round. I love this ability to bend it round, and I get that nice contour. I really like that. Okay, turn your head to the right on the last one here before we do the finishing.
So that was using an oscillating handpiece, and this particular one was called the Swingle. The Swingle is made by a company called Intensiv, and TOC were the distributors. And this was just brilliant. I mean, I'm no longer going to be getting discs. I'm getting the Swingle because it would just perform so well. And it's no wonder that so many dentists and orthodontists were messaging me on Instagram saying that they're excited for me to use it, and they also thought that I would love it so much, and it was really great. And the thing I love about the Swingle is the ability, and I emphasize this during the video, the ability to bend the file. I mean, that is genius. To get that nice contour of the canine is great. Now, my buddy Farouk Ahmed, who's the host of Ortho in Summary, he's a huge fan of the space opener. He says, oh, the space opener is one of the best things about it. So to actually allow the space to put your file in, that's really handy. And then the different files of different courses that you can put in, they're very efficient at doing high quality IPR quickly. And then, of course, they do emphasize the importance of finishing and polishing, because just like using a disc or a burr, you do get a tombstone-like appearance if all you do is use the 80 micron coarse file and you go in and out. But now you have the ability to bend the files, which are the finishing and polishing ones, and get that lovely contour. So the sequence would be use the space opener, then maybe the 40 micron, and maybe the 60 or the 80 micron, and then you go back and you start polishing and finishing, and you can do several contacts. So, you know, space opener, space opener, space opener, 40, 40, 40, 80, 80, 80. And then that way you're changing the file less, because the efficiency increases more when you're not constantly changing the file. So you use one file and use it for all the teeth as relevant, and then you change the file and then you use the next one. So I am very confident that this is going to decrease the amount of time I'll be spending on my IPR appointments, and where I've got a nice aligned contact, I can be doing that contact's IPR in one go. Now I'm going to give the rating now, but I'm also going to talk a little about how we can be a little bit more clever when it comes to planning IPR. Now the rating for the Swingle, safety wise, I'm going to give the Swingle a 4. It's almost a 5, but it's not quite a 5, because I think with the space opener it's got a serrated edge, and if you're not careful you could ledge into a tooth, but I think if you're sensible and careful and you approach it correctly, and it's got this locking and unlocking mechanism which is really clever, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, which is pretty good. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 for efficiency. Now it would be a 5, but again you have to use different files. You have to work from one file to the next file to the next file, but you can increase your efficiency, but like I said earlier, by using one file and using it in all the places that you need to, and then you change the file. So it's a 4 out of 5 for that. But the quality of IPR was just brilliant. I'd say 5 out of 5, because I can get that consistent space, and when that 80 micron, the 60 micron goes through, I mean, I felt really confident that I had the right amount of space. So it'd be really interesting to, you know, have a study where it compares doing the IPR with a Swingle and everything else, and make sure you get the right amount of IPR the first time. It just felt as though when I was using my thickness gauge that I was near enough the ballpark, whereas with the other systems like the Bur or the disc, I had to go back and check
check and refine, whereas I felt much more confident that the right amount of IPR was being done with the Swingle. And as I said, absolutely fell in love with the ability to bend the file. It was interesting when I was speaking to Debbie from TOC, she said that most orthodontists and dentists buy the double-sided file only. I think there's a lot of merit in buying the single-sided. By getting a single-sided file, for me, at least one, I think it makes a lot of sense, because if you want to preferentially remove tooth structure from one tooth and you don't want to cause any stripping on another tooth, you can do that, and you wrap it around a canine or something. So for me, it makes sense to buy maybe a couple of single-sided ones just for me, but most orthodontists tend to buy the double-sided ones, which I guess is more efficient. Well, there we have it, guys. I hope you found that video useful. Go back to different relevant sections if you want to see that clinical technique again. Just want to say thank you so much to Saj and Debbie from TOC Dental for coming down. I'm going to talk a little bit about staging the IPR and the ClinCheck and that kind of stuff, but I just want to say, again, thank you so much, TOC Dental. If you want to get a Swingle, there is a Protrusive discount code that they're offering, so thank you so much, TOC, for offering that to the community. The discount details are below in the description, so you can take advantage of that offer if you're in the market for improving the efficiency and quality of your IPR. I would heavily recommend the Swingle. I would also get strips. I would also definitely get strips. I would get a Swingle. And I think a disc for that odd case where you are a little bit crowded, I do see merit in that. Now, I have all these toys. I've got all these, and I think for every patient, it'll be a little bit different, the recipe that you use, but most patients you get by with just strips and a Swingle, for example. So I was really, really happy that I used it, and I'm no longer going to be stocking up too much on discs, because I think I found the magic recipe in the Swingle. So just a word on staging your IPR. Sometimes we have to be a little bit clever. So when we're planning our IPR, we're often concerned about round tripping. Now, round tripping is when you've got crowded lower incisors and you let them unravel and let them procline, and then you do the IPR and then you retract them backwards. The concern with that is someone with a thin biotype, you're concerned about recession, you're concerned about proclining, getting recession, and then bringing it back. That's called round tripping. So as dentists, when we do Invisalign, we tend to avoid round tripping for that reason, and therefore we're trying to do some space creation IPR while the teeth are a little bit crowded. So where you can round trip, where it's possible to round trip a little bit, then you should in that area, because then it gives you a nice aligned contact, and then you can be very efficient in your IPR at that appointment. The other thing to consider is if you've got 0.2, 0.2, 0.3, 0.2, 0.2 of IPR, then maybe you can eliminate one or two contacts and add them on to the other teeth, if the shape and anatomy of the teeth allow and permit that. Therefore, you have less contacts to do IPR on, and that's another way to be a bit more efficient. And lastly, whenever we see the yellow flash up on Invisalign ClinCheck, for example, a lot of dentists say to me, I really struggle doing 0.5 millimeters of IPR with a strip all at one appointment. Well, when that yellow area flashes, that's just an indication that there's a collision about to happen. So the teeth will collide. It doesn't mean you need to do all the IPR at that visit. So I commonly will do, if it's 0.5, first visit where they turns yellow, I would do 0.2. And maybe 4 to 6 weeks later, I might do another 0.15. And then 4 to 6 weeks later, I'll do the remainder, okay? So it doesn't mean you have to do all at once. It means that the teeth are about to collide and you should create some space. But if the teeth are well aligned and you've got something like a Swingle, then, use it once and get all the space creation done in one go. That just seems like a clever thing to do for me. So I was actually really impressed with the Swingle. And I see why a lot of dentists are fans of Swingle. I hope you found it useful to see a Bur in action. I hope you found it useful to maybe go over a little bit of revision about strips and safety around strips. And also the disc. It was pretty cool how I use that digital caliper. And I kind of nailed it. I completely fluked that. But I hope you found that useful. If you did, please comment below. Please share this with a friend. Please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end. Not many people get to this part. So thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I appreciate you. And I look forward to creating more content like this for you guys.